I got ADHD, baby. I set my goals, not your expectations, baby. I need my tools and a brain vacation, baby. Neurodivergent flow, no limitation, baby.
Hi, everyone. So welcome to ADHD at Work and our IG live series slash ADHD talk show. We haven't really developed a name for it quite yet. And so we were just moving in an ADHD way and just getting it done. So today we're going to be talking about ADHD and public speaking. And I have my guest here, Sammie, and she is from Speak Y'all, sorry, Speak Y'all. And I'm going to have her introduce herself and tell us a little bit more about her story.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sammie Walker Herrera. Thank you so much, Megan, for bringing me on. And yes, I am founder of Speak Y'all, which is both a public speaking training consultancy and ADHD coaching organization. And so what I do is I work mainly with neurodivergent adults, especially ADHDers, on things like building more structure in their lives, building more structure in their speaking, getting a speaking routine that makes sense with their ADHD and builds more of that motivation to speak at work and speak for themselves in their own businesses.
Thank you so much for joining us. And, you know, ADHD coaching is, there's a lot of ADHD coaches, but we all definitely specialize in different aspects of the life that we have to live as adults with ADHD. But what brought you to starting this company?
Yeah, I would say it was a long time coming, working in higher education, specifically in career consulting, working with students predominantly on finding their stories, developing their interview skills, building a lot of their soft communication skills. And over time, through connecting with business coaches and trainers myself, I found a really strong passion in being able to help people like myself who felt like they were rambling, they were disorganized, speaking super fast just to get it out of the way, or speaking super fast because my brain was just going a million miles per hour. And so being able to help someone channel their energy, not tamp themselves down and not be less authentic, but how do they channel that energy toward what the mission of what they're even talking about is?
I love that. And, you know, it's similar in terms of my own story, right? So it's, and, you know, I address the challenges with ADHD in the workplace or just work in general with my clients. And it's one of those things where, you know, as business owners and ADHD coaches, we kind of focus on the areas that interest us the most in a very ADHD fashion, right? And it's the pain points that are that we're really noticing that we can really address, right? Like we're designed to do this work, essentially.
Pretty much too. And I think there's also a sense of diving deeper into a topic for us as ADHDers. For example, every time I would give a presentation at work, I'd always ask my supervisor or a couple folks I trusted who attended, like, hey, how did I do? The answer I always got was, oh, it was great. It was good. But I knew I had areas where I could grow. I knew there were things that I wasn't seeing in my own speaking. I know sometimes my own speaking at work or with different organizations I was a part of didn't have the impact that I wanted. I didn't feel like I was moving people towards something. I felt like, oh, that was just nice. And then it didn't have any specific type of impact. And I realized there is so much more under public speaking and communication than just, oh, you gave a presentation and you didn't look nervous. Maybe I was nervous. How do I navigate that? How do I know what skills of mine I'm actually really good at so that I can lean on those more? But then, of course, what are other things that I can work on iteratively?
I love that. What are some common challenges that you come across with your clients?
Yes, I would say the main challenge I come across with clients is overwhelming nervousness or anxiety when speaking. And for some folks, it presents as that nervousness and anxiety. Maybe their eyebrows are really high up, their eyes are really open, they're going really fast, they're shifting around quite a lot, like their body language is channeling that energy, that nervous energy that they're feeling, but it's going in a way that's betraying their confidence or distracting other people. But surprisingly, a lot of folks who come to me regarding nervousness or anxiety with public speaking don't look nervous when they're speaking. They'll send me like videos of previous like speaking engagements, or they'll practice in front of me. And I can only tell a couple of possible, like, hey, it looks like you might be a little bit nervous here or there, but it's that
Yeah.
internal nervousness that's causing some challenges, because over time, if their internal nervousness is up here,
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of fear, and their confidence is here, things will shift. So even if from the results of our public speaking coaching, they don't necessarily look like they've done too much, but they feel so much different, they'll get up on stage and practice more. And when I say stage, it's a very liberal use of the word stage. It's not always like a TEDx stage. It's not always like a podium. Sometimes it's just saying your opinion at work. Sometimes it's being honest with other people, or doing a live like this to highlight one's brand or one's next step in their business or their goals.
Thank you so much for saying that, because well, there's a couple of things actually that popped up for me when you were talking. So one, just like how nervousness presents, right? And I know for me personally, like when I'm really nervous, you can tell. And it's not necessarily just like how I'm speaking or what I'm saying, or things just seem all over the place. I just break out into a sweat. And so I have a very my physical reaction to when I'm nervous, for sure. But with practice, I think once I become a little bit more comfortable and get rid of some of those fears, or address some of the fears that I'm feeling, then the sweating stops. But there was that was one thing. But then also, have you been to the ADHD conference, the International ADHD conference with Ada and Chad?
I haven't yet. Once I do, I'm just gonna tell everyone it's my first one. I haven't been yet. As an ADHD coach, I've been doing that for the last year and some change. So hopefully I can make it to the conference at some point.
Yeah, it's for those that are listening, or those that are listening to the replay, it is in November 13th through the 15th in Kansas City, Missouri this year. I am actually facilitating the entrepreneurship support group. So they have support groups for different topics, and then there's just a lot of updated workshops around like the latest research around ADHD and just different areas of aspects of ADHD. But either way, you should check it out. I'll post it on my page if you're looking for that information. But I mentioned that because when I first went, or even the conference last year, and listening to the main speakers that also have ADHD, it was the way that they presented and the way that they did their public speaking was like something that I just have never seen in traditional conferences. It was so authentic, and who they are with their ADHD, and recognizing the distractibility, like that the things that they get distracted by even during the presentation, or just the level of excitement, was so fascinating to see. That I look forward to personally getting there one day. But within your work, do you help people be able to find that authentic voice as ADHD, and kind of lean into their ADHD-ness when it comes to public speaking?
Ooh, I love that question. I would say with authentic voice, it's hard to express your authentic voice when you haven't heard your voice in a while. I think the first part is just exposing yourself to talking more. And one thing I use with my clients is a random question generator to get started. Because I find that the speaking on the spot and those impromptu speaking skills are really hard for a lot of folks. And it can be pretty relevant to start off with that, even with a presentation, because presentations are always going to have a Q&A component to it, where folks are going to come to you afterward. And since ADHDers have such divergent thinking and are so energetic, sometimes someone does ask you a question that's not really relevant or related to your presentation. So being able to anticipate random questions at times can be really helpful. But the other side of that practice is sometimes you'll get a question that just really stumps you. And it is about your core values, or it is about something that you haven't talked to yourself about or others about as well. And so using that generator, I find it really helpful in a number of ways, like the practicing, but also, hey, what are some topics that stump you? are these things that are coming up at work or coming up in your presentation or coming up in your business development? And how can we use your core strengths, like your character strengths, but how can we also use your speaking strengths, some of the verbal, vocal, or visual aspects of your speaking that someone might be a bit more natural about, to feel more comfortable answering those questions and feeling more authentic?
I love that. I feel like sometimes I experience almost the opposite. And so I don't know if you come across that, in the sense of the more quote unquote like preparation work that I do, the more nervous I get. And I don't know if that's just a combination of working memory or just planning and prioritization and just overthinking. But all of that kind of gets in the way of a successful public speaking engagement for me.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, if you have like a very intensive structure, intensive memorization process, using so much of your working memory and just your energy in general to remember that, let alone what you want to talk about, let alone trying to be comfortable in your body or feel authentic, that can get in the way. That's why some folks, some TED Talks you might see seem very rehearsed, seem very presented. Some TED Talks have very regimented, strict structures that people build to help them remember, but it might get in the way of that audience connection. The way I navigate that, Megan, is I teach ADHDers, and I teach anyone I do public speaking coaching with, flexible structures. Structures that are very simple, maybe 2 to 3 parts to them at max, that allow ADHDers to remember the flow and remember where they are in their answer, but at the same time then have the awareness of like, okay, this is where I'm wrapping up, or okay, I've already gotten to this point. I feel confident. I don't have to repeat myself.
Yeah, I completely can relate to that 100%. I actually feel like I was just having this conversation with a colleague the other day, because I was giving a presentation and I just did something different. So what I normally do with the presentations, like, you have, especially when you're giving them virtually, you have your kind of like show notes.
Yeah.
On the side. And so I usually just write down some points that I want to make sure that I hit on that particular slide. But when the last presentation, I did a little bit more, not structured show notes, but just like almost like a script. But I noticed that my own ADHD was getting in the way because I was following the script and I wasn't. And then I got lost in where I was supposed to be within the script. And then I just felt like I was repeating myself and didn't know what was happening. And so your point about just, what did you call it? Like go with the flow, not go with the flow, but.
Yeah. Flexible structures often can help us with our flow.
Yeah, so having some flexible structures, I think, would have been a lot more helpful because I didn't feel like I presented well. And I thought that the script was going to help, and it did not. And so, some of it is also a little bit of trial and error and trying to figure out what's going to work for you, for sure. But I love that framework and that, and naming it.
Yeah, and Megan, I think that's awesome that you did try something new, right? You got that data from yourself rather than assuming, oh, this will work or this won't work for me. You tried it out. And the funny thing, again, speaking, is most people who watched you probably thought you did fine, right? They probably thought you did great. But what's really important when we take ownership of our speaking skills is, how do I feel? And how do I channel that energy of how I feel and my confidence in what I'm speaking, no matter what? And it makes it easier for any negative feedback that we might get to kind of roll off because we know that we did what we consider our own best.
And what's your own best today?
Yeah.
Right, because you're going to learn from that experience, and then what your best is tomorrow is going to potentially look different.
Yeah, and I can imagine, like, especially if the script is kind of more paragraphy, maybe there wasn't like spaces or bolds or color coding or like anything like that, it sounds like it can be really easy to get lost in there.
Yeah, it was horrible. I would never recommend anybody doing that.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because some people work better with scripts, like someone with an acting training maybe that is
Right.
the best thing for them. But I find on average, most folks don't have acting training. Maybe they did some like show choir, or they did some like a theater play in high school. I know I did. But I think for a lot of folks, keeping it simple is most important, because when we have too much details and too much information, it can detract from the core message we want to share.
Mm-hmm. For sure. The other thing, you just had mentioned something that I wanted to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. I'll forget. It will come back to me.
Sure.
But you made a previous comment too about, public speaking opportunities. So it could be a presentation. It could be presenting on stage. And we talked about, stage as a loose term.
Mm-hmm.
But showing up on social media is feeling more and more like public speaking to me lately. What are your thoughts about that?
I've definitely worked with clients who felt the same way, and why they wanted to work with me is they felt like I really want to or need to have more of a video presence, or have more of a brand, myself as a brand presence on social
Mm-hmm.
media. And I would say social media is speaking from a stage, but it could also be an empowering frame where it's like, this is my stage. For example,
Mm-hmm.
ADHD at work, like, you choose who's coming along here, right? There's that curation, there's that trust that you've built in your brand, there's that awareness of like who you are, what you do, your face as part of that
Mm-hmm.
brand. So I can totally see it as a form of public speaking. My question to you too is then, how do you define public speaking, and how might you redefine it so it feels better to you?
Oh, that's such a good question. I feel like I'm getting coached. I love it.
Who knew?
This is great. I mean, I think any single time that I'm in front of a camera of some sort, it's like public speaking, to be honest.
Yeah.
Or if I'm speaking to an audience other than myself, it is public speaking. And so then that's where, because of that loose and wide definition, a broad definition that I'm using, um, I'm realizing that I need to break that up into individual categories as well. Because I do find myself, there is a difference between, for me, that there's a difference between like using like a script or having something pre-recorded or planned
Yeah.
versus doing like something a little bit more ad lib, a little bit more relaxed, and kind of go with the flow. Like, so for me, like these IG lives, so much easier. But if I were to have a script and I'm trying to pre-record something for a Instagram reel or a TikTok reel or something like that, I don't know what happens. I get in front of the camera and then all of a sudden my brain stops working.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but when I think about my goal as a business owner, it is being a little bit more public and doing a little bit more public speaking, but in the more scripted and planned way. And I think that's the area in which where I struggle. You give me a mic and ask me to talk about something random, I got you. Ask me a random question, I'm good. But if you ask me to prepare and then pre-record something, it's like the end of the world. I've done 10 different takes. My mind is going all over the place. And so when I'm public speaking to the camera, pre-planned,
Mm-hmm.
that's when it all goes out the window. What advice do you have for me?
First off, the first piece of advice I have for you is recognizing the awareness that you have between what you consider like public speaking, which probably is defined as like this pressured, scripted, high stakes experience, versus, hey, this is public speaking, but it doesn't have that same charge.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with a client who, they don't mind speaking on camera, they don't mind speaking on Zoom, but as soon as they see that red recording dot, that's where they lose it. That's where the pressure and the stress comes in. I think the first step really is, how do I disentangle all of these experiences with my visibility and understand exactly what is causing the pressure? Because then you can make some different choices about that. You can either find ways to depressurize that and make it more similar to types of speaking that you feel more comfortable with, but you can also make sure then you then practice in those types of environments so much that you can regulate your nervous system and become more used to them. Kind of like an exposure experience.
Okay. So I should stop avoiding making content on my platform and start practicing and then not letting the perfectionism get in the way. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I am saying that, but when you say it like that, it sounds like, oh, just do that. And I think it is like something that you iterate on, you practice on. That you hit a core word here too, which is avoiding. And just like anything, when we avoid that thing, we make it bigger than it is. And so
Mm-hmm.
again, how can we be gentle with ourselves by putting ourselves in that pressure situation and saying, hey, how long does it take for it to feel less pressure? Because I imagine there are times, Megan, when you've given a talk on a stage or you've had more of that prepared workshop where after some time you're getting more of your flow, you are feeling comfortable, you are answering some questions more casually.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yep, probably like 10 minutes into it sometimes, but that period of time is getting a little bit shorter and shorter.
Exactly. And so yeah, maybe it's 10 minutes now, and then with more practice it's 7 minutes and then 3 minutes, and that's
Mm-hmm.
where you can see a lot of those milestones rather than was I nervous, was I not nervous, and then you have this like binary. It's more of like,
Right.
how did I improve in this way? How much time did it take me to feel better about this?
Okay, so I feel like I need to test myself this week. Um, and those that are watching, make sure that you hold me accountable and trying to make sure that I get in front of the camera and record some of this content for you.
Get that stopwatch out. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it looks like some of our audience members too are also having similar challenges when it comes to speaking in person is easier than addressing the camera.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it feels common. So, and also thank you for sharing that because now, myself, I feel a little bit more normal.
Yeah. I think it is totally normal. It's funny too, because again, you can have folks who feel the other way around. There's maybe
Mhm.
someone who feels like being around so many people, it's so unpredictable. Camera, at least it's just me. And so knowing that we can all have different reactions to the same experiences means
Yeah,
that we just need to know exactly what is causing us some of that stress, what are areas of speaking that we're already killing it at or already strong at, and how can we increase that public speaking space where it is enjoyable. Because if you're building your business, it is something you kind of have to do, right? So you might have
yeah,
well invest some of that time to figure out how to enjoy it more.
yeah, that part. Especially with the ADHD brain, we focus on
Mm.
like novelty and something that really, things that we do actually enjoy. And
Yeah.
so, um, for those that are listening, like thinking about what is it that you enjoy about the thing that you're most challenged by, right now, I think is a really good question to reflect on and to think about. Definitely something that I'm going to think about after this for sure. Um, and I also feel like, there's always some deeper challenge there when it comes to the emotional regulation piece, when it comes to ADHD and also public speaking. Like, did you
Mm.
have, and like in feeling rejected, right? Like, did you have an experience where you felt rejected, and then now is that impacting your ability to go onto the stage the next time? And what
Mm.
did you do to address that? Right?
Ooh, I love that question. I feel
Yeah.
like the times I felt rejected when speaking were times that I created that story of rejection, or I was zooming in on negative comments or negative feedback. For example, last month I hosted a session called LinkedIn for ADHD coaches.
Mm-hmm.
I have about 10 years under my belt of being a career consultant. I love teaching about LinkedIn. And of course, I could also highlight my own public speaking chops at the same time. LinkedIn also offers video options, right? So if folks want to create more of that like, speaking brand, LinkedIn itself can be a stage too. So
Mm-hmm.
when I was giving the presentation, I was asking people, hey, what do you know about LinkedIn? And about a quarter, maybe 20%, let's say 20% of the comments were really negative. Not about me though. They were just negative about LinkedIn. Like, oh, LinkedIn, like you get ghosted, or LinkedIn, you get spammed about business opportunities, or oh, I've never gotten clients on LinkedIn. And so just that negative sentiment coming in the comments was one of the first times I felt a bit of like, oh my gosh, like are people not enjoying this presentation? Am I causing some issues here? And what I had to do is remember, okay, what I'm here to do is I'm here to educate. I'm here to help shift minds, not because I'm like a LinkedIn like influencer affiliate or something, but hey, using that as a tool for building business is something that supported me, and I'd love to help other people discover that as well. And so at the end of the presentation, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get raked in the coals, because I have my own feedback software that I use.
Okay.
When I went to the feedback, maybe about 20 minutes later, all positive. All positive. Nothing about like, oh, she's trying to promote LinkedIn too much, or oh, this was annoying or not helpful. And so I felt like the story I was creating while giving that presentation was like, oh my gosh, people were so annoyed. I picked a topic that stresses people out. Like, they're going to like rate me negatively for this. And I had to realize that that was their own thing. They saw my talk as a way to get support, to talk about their mishaps and stresses on LinkedIn. And me focusing on what I'm doing and what my mission was, which is to support business owners and being more successful with their ADHD coaching business, helped me not spiral in the middle, and helped me like keep my mind calm as I went along.
I love that. So I want to switch gears a little bit, if that's okay. Well, not really switch gears. We kind of talked about this a little bit before. So there's a comment in from one of the people that are watching. It says, I've been struggling with answering questions in class or in a group setting, feeling as though people don't understand what I'm saying.
Okay. Thank you for sharing.
And it impacts me quite a bit. And I think we talked about this a little bit, but I think but we didn't really necessarily address some solutions that go along with that. And so I think we mentioned that that's something that does happen, right? Like, we're in situations where you don't really know what is going to be coming your way.
Yeah.
And also having some feelings and thoughts around, like, questioning yourself while you're presenting and asking yourself, like, is my point getting across? And I think you also mentioned too, what happens, especially with ADHD, you just kind of start talking.
Like, gotta go.
And checking for understanding. Like, my response and my feedback would be, like, are you taking moments? Do you have built-in moments to be able to check for understanding when you are talking to other people? I like to include that, at least when I'm presenting. So then that gives me kind of a check to see how people are interpreting what it is that I'm saying.
Yes, and I can imagine when you do that too, Megan, like, sometimes folks really are thinking when you're giving them that pause. And I think it's very important not to take someone's facial expression at face value. Just because someone's thinking about it, maybe it looks like they're confused, might not necessarily mean they're confused. Maybe they're thinking of how they want to formulate their question, or how they want to add a comment to there as well. So I think pacing is important, right? Pacing, pausing, so that folks have more time to process. And then when we do ask those clarifying questions, being open to whatever folks answer with. They might not be confused. They might just actually want to add their own insight, or they might have a great clarifying question that you can answer quickly.
It's almost like trying to not answer the question before the question is asked.
Yeah, I find most of the time when folks are confused after someone's speaking, it's oftentimes because the speaker is like, okay, here's my answer. But let me add more evidence. Okay, wait, let me add this. And from adding so much context, it might end up confusing more folks. And so a big part of public speaking confidence and training for that is, I have said my piece. I have said what my impact was. I've gotten to my point. I trust that I have communicated it well. And if anyone is confused, that's okay. I can address it in that moment.
Yep. And what I just to add on to that is thinking about sometimes just not adding too much. So when we're going to, again, that's something that I'm realizing more and more too, is that there's so much content to share, but when you have a certain amount of time in order to share that information, you don't try not to share everything.
Hmm.
There's bits and pieces of it that can, like if you have a 5-point presentation or something, like maybe only 3 points are really what needs to be shared during that particular time frame. And we can save those additional 2 points for something else. But I think sometimes when you're trying to squeeze in too much,
Hmm.
it can overwhelm your audience.
Absolutely. The way I like to think about it is like chapters in a book. Like if
Mm-hmm.
I'm structuring a 1 hour presentation, maybe the first part is about something with mindset, the second part is actively doing some type of activity, and then the third part is, hey, what do you do with this afterward? I find when we
Mm-hmm.
have a structure that's more, like you said, is not too detailed to start off with, it makes it so much more clear where the information goes. It's like it's
Mm-hmm.
deciding for you in some ways, right? So rather than trying to plan minute 1 versus 60, it's like, okay, here's my 3 main points. And yes, there are going to be subsections underneath that. And as you practice, you can also get more of a sense of like, hey, this might be a little bit longer than I'm thinking, or hey, someone might have a question here. So let me create that strategic space. So as much as I teach
Mm-hmm.
impromptu speaking, I also teach how to think ahead for the content and that delivery so that it's not overwhelming for yourself as a speaker and you feel like you have to rush. You've probably been to a bunch of presentations where someone has a million slides and then they just skip over like 10 of them in a row. They're like, they don't have any time left. I help people think ahead for those types of things so that not only are they not overwhelming their audience, but they're not overwhelming themselves.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that. But there was something else. I wrote it down
Mm.
when you were mentioning before. You talked about feedback software.
Yeah.
What is that?
Oh, okay. Well, I'll say I use this more as a speaker rather than, let's say, if I were at work or if I were at a volunteering and highlighting something in public. I use a system called Talkadot. What it does is you can generate a QR code or a link that toward the end of your presentation or at the end of the presentation, someone can scan that code and then give you feedback on your presentation. Like, hey, was it engaging? Was it informative? Was it influential? What are some things that Sammie should know? What are some things Sammie might change? And having that feedback is extremely helpful as I iterate and continue building presentations. It helps when I give a presentation to a group and it's a bit more of a beta and I gave half of a presentation and I want to
Mm-hmm.
build it up to a longer presentation. But it also allows me an opportunity to connect with the folks afterward. Folks can choose to share their email with me if they would like to, or if they're interested in coaching, they can reach out to me from that as well.
Okay. Okay. In my mind, I thought it was something else, but I think that makes perfect sense. Um, are there any other, sorry, there's like all these stupid nuts.
Oh
Is
no.
there, they're so annoying. Is there any other technology or AI or other tools that you use in order to help improve your public speaking or to help enhance your public speaking?
Yes, there are a number of tools I use personally as well as my clients regarding like speaking. Uh, First one would be I use Google Keep a lot to start building out my presentations. I like to call them sketches. Google Keep is pretty much like a notes app. And
Mm-hmm.
so let's say I know I have a presentation in a month and I'm getting a little bit like, oh, like it's coming up. I should start working on this. I don't open the slides first. I start with the content first. And having something on Google Keep is nice because as I have ideas like working in the world, walking to a coffee shop, hanging out with a friend, I can pop it in there. And then once I'm at my computer, it's so much easier to envision a lot more of those slides and the educational design from those notes. From the delivery standpoint, the random question generator I use is extremely helpful. I use it a lot for warming up. So oftentimes, like before hopping on a podcast like this, I'll rev up that random question generator just to literally warm up my voice. I didn't today because I had a coaching session right before this, but if I didn't have some type of conversation with someone or I want to practice a couple of my speaking skills like pausing, pacing, emphasis, I might do it with those random questions as fodder. So I don't have to decide what I want to talk about. It also removes some of those decisions.
So what is this random question generator?
Yeah, I think it's just random question. I just Google
Oh,
random question generator. There's a number of them. Again,
okay.
no affiliates here. I use one that's green, and their questions range from things like, what was the coolest cloud you've ever seen, to
Uh,
what's something that you would like to accomplish before the end of the year? And my favorite question on this random question generator, why?
oh, yeah.
It's a fun one.
Yeah, that's, it always reminds me of like a 5 why exercise that I do with clients sometimes,
Yeah.
and just to get a deeper understanding, especially if those like entrepreneurs that are trying to identify a business that they want to
Mm-hmm.
pursue.
Yeah, and
Or,
that core reason for why they're
yeah,
doing what they're doing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting too. I feel like that would actually maybe helpful to if you are that ADHDer that is having some trouble struggling answering some questions. We talk about practicing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so maybe it is taking a little bit of time to practice and using a random question generator. Now, with the random question generators, can you maybe like random questions but related to the topic that you're going to be discussing?
I think it's a great question. I believe there's probably some generators like that. I will tell you an AI
Okay.
tool I use because I know you were interested in hearing that. I often for my clients, and I use this sparingly, I use a tool called Yoodli AI. So it's spelled YOODLI.ai. I've used it for a number of years, and I mainly use it with clients to record their baseline video. So, hey, you're coming into coaching. You already have a certain number of speaking strengths. You already have some areas you want to improve in. Answer 10 random questions. Send me the video, whether it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes long, and we're going to put it in Yoodli AI to scan things like your pacing, how many filler words you had, any weak words. And another tool that's a bit more recent with Yoodli AI is after you do that, it will give you some relevant follow-up questions. Now, of course, with the 10 random questions, you might not get super specific follow-up
Mhm.
questions, but if you practice a presentation using it, then the system will be able to give you a simulation of totally fair game questions someone might ask after a presentation.
Okay. I'm
So
gonna be
it's a
practicing
place
all
to
of them.
practice. But I will say I don't have my clients use it every time they practice. I would rather it be kind of to collect some milestones. So hey, we have this baseline video. 3 weeks later, this is how some things improved. Because as you know, like in any process, whether it's exercise or health or like working out, all that kind of jazz, things come and go. You have ups and downs as you go along, but you want to see over time what the improvements are. So we might use it once a week, or we might use it every couple of weeks just to see where we are with certain speaking skills.
You're just adding all types of things to my to-do list.
Hopefully that's a good thing.
It is. It is. It is definitely a good thing. So somebody had also made a comment about Toastmasters, and they
Mm-hmm.
said that it was not easy with ADHD, and how somebody should do a Toastmasters version for just for ADHD or autism or adults with autism. Um, what are your thoughts about that? I haven't personally engaged in Toastmasters. It was one of those things that I always saw, but just kind of felt intimidated by. But what are your thoughts about Toastmasters and ADHD?
I've personally went to Toastmasters once. I will say because I have a background in giving workshops in higher education, it wasn't the right fit for me because I felt like a lot of folks like were earlier on in their speaking journey than me.
Hmm.
And so if someone, for example, is like, hey, I already feel like I have a lot of strengths, but I'm trying to work on a specific presentation, or I'm trying to work on a very specific skill, because it's a group environment and there might just be a lot of beginners, that might not be that best place. There may still be some other type of group that can be helpful, but I also have clients who say, hey, I struggle in speaking with groups. So
Hmm.
at the same time as working with me, sometimes they'll also go to Toastmasters just to have more practice under their belt. My public speaking trainer was trained through Toastmasters, so I know what they teach is top notch. I
Yeah.
teach a lot of adapted versions of things from Toastmasters, but I do think that one of the reasons Toastmasters works for a lot of people but might not work for ADHDers is it's very structured, very regimented.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, if you have an hour and you have 12 people, you might only get 5 to 8 minutes of practice versus
Oh, okay.
being able to actually have more dedicated time that you're being held accountable to during the week, or having a coaching session focusing just fully on your goals.
Okay. That makes sense. I haven't. And David Rose, if you are still listening,
Hi.
and I would love to, put in the chat a little bit more about your experience or what your thoughts were about why it didn't work for you. Also, um, that would be helpful for our audience. Yeah, it wasn't something that I ever tried, um,
Mm-hmm.
but I always viewed it as like the top notch, public speaking agency or platform or company. But I wasn't, and that was also before my own ADHD diagnosis too. So it would be interesting to hear a little bit more about that, other people's experience with Toastmasters or just other platforms when it comes to practicing public speaking.
Yeah. No, Toastmasters, like, I have a lot of, like, what's the word? High regard for Toastmasters. What it does to bring folks, especially those who are really, really nervous or have not really had a lot of group experience or are just trying to find some other way to gain speaking practice. Because sometimes at work, you just don't have the opportunities to speak. Or they have you speak, but they don't let you use work hours to practice. Even if you're not actively practicing your work talk at Toastmasters, just even having more exposure experiences about speaking or positive speaking, getting feedback that's measured and supportive, could always be helpful.
Okay. Yeah, David has said that it was too much structure and rigidity.
Yeah.
Rigidity? You got that. And then he did learn a lot the hard way.
Okay.
And then somebody else had mentioned that thinking about practicing public speaking, they bet that they can also really help with interviews as well. And
Yes.
um, I would 100% agree.
Yeah. No, David just said finding the right Toastmasters group is important. So, for example, for me, the group that I had joined for a short time maybe was not the right group for me. It doesn't mean there isn't a right group, or you can't create some type of group where you're practicing with other folks that you know. I think the core
Yeah,
here too with speaking skills is they are skills. There is an education and training component to it, not just a practice, because we don't
yeah,
also want to accidentally practice bad habits.
yeah. Um, and that's why throughout this entire conversation, we've talked a little bit, like, it's very important to be able to increase your awareness around, like, where are the areas of related public speaking that is troubling for you so that you can do something about it and find the right supports to meet those particular needs. Um, and getting that and finding that right coach or ways to get that additional support so that you're right, like, you're not giving yourself, practicing in the wrong space, right? And I think that's important for interviews, as somebody else had brought up too, like practicing interviews, getting that feedback from somebody that can be able to give you some really good advice and input to point things out. That's why I kind of like these the AI softwares that you talked about, and then also getting the real life feedback after you're doing presentations as
Mm-hmm.
well. Because all of that information is just really good data if you're trying to move in a particular direction.
Yes. Again, time and time again, folks aren't getting feedback that is helpful for them to move forward with their speaking. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's really important to understand, hey, what do I understand are my challenges? But it's also super important for us to know what our strengths are or have an awareness of our strengths. So I start every speaking workshop or presentation with something about speaking strengths. And so, folks here in the audience, if you're comfortable with it, I would love to hear what you think is your biggest speaking strength in the chat. Because when we start off with that, we can really lean on that to feel a lot more comfortable working on our speaking challenges.
Mm-hmm. And then while people are waiting to put that information into the
Yeah.
chat, what are some what are some common strengths when it comes to public speaking, specifically those with ADHD?
Yeah, I find that a lot of ADHDers have a lot of great energy, or there might be just naturally more engaging or naturally using their body a little bit more to channel energy. I often find that ADHDers tend to launch into stories and sometimes more of the specifics and details, which I think
Mm-hmm.
can also be really engaging and authentic as well. I also see, and this is, one of the things to balance, right? Folks jumping into speaking, trusting their gut right at the start for the first thing they're going to say and committing to that, I think can be really
Mm-hmm.
helpful. And then lastly, I also see a bit more of that audience engagement. So thinking about the questions someone might ask as they're speaking, or responding to things that happen, or even using humor could be really great, especially for folks who have that strong humor character trait.
Yeah. And then somebody said, I'm very strong with off the cuff engagement. I've been told that I'm good as storyteller too.
Okay, well, that's aligning with a few things that I've definitely noticed quite a bit in ADHDers. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The off the cuff is, I would say, it's my strength too. I was going to see if somebody else is going to talk about their strengths. What are your strengths?
I would say one thing I hear time and time from folks, but also feel for myself is just like a strong presence, like a lot of energy as I come in. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
whether there's a room of people or it's a Zoom room of people or it's just a recording, I can bring the energy that engages some folks because I know how important it is. And not only important it is for folks to engage, but also important for me. Like I don't want to disengage while I'm speaking. Like I want to have fun. I want to laugh. I want to engage. And I also want it to feel like a non-judgmental, fun space. And the way I can
Mm-hmm.
do that is instead of making it seem like this lecture, hello everyone, here's the fundamentals of public speaking. I can say, you're here for strengthen your speaking skills. Let's get started and let's start off with what your number one strength is. I feel like channels that energy and makes people feel more comfortable.
Yeah. And someone else said that their strengths are being mission driven and then their energy.
I love that. And I feel like people can tell that too. Like people can tell like, whoa, you're really here to propel your mission, whether it is the company you're a part of, a nonprofit or
Mm-hmm.
volunteering organization, their own project, like that sense of the core of what I'm here for is this, and I find this important. I think people really value that, and it often can be really helpful for when we're writing up our speech or we're planning ahead. We cut everything that's not related to that mission. And therefore, it just makes it so much easier to make those decisions about what to communicate to others.
Yeah. And when we're really passionate about something, we're truly passionate about it.
Heck yeah, we are.
And so you can almost tell when, especially, the context of work, right? If you're working for a company and you're just not like, you're not into what it is that they're doing, or you're not as connected to the work, and then yet you're supposed to speak about it publicly.
Yeah.
I can only imagine that is more difficult for us with ADHD than it is to speak about something that we are more passionate about.
Yeah, I would say even sometimes talking about what we're passionate about, if we haven't gotten enough sleep that day, if we're just feeling kind of off, that already takes energy, let alone talking about something that makes us feel like not as authentic or not as interested. That just doubles that. And
Mm-hmm.
energy management, let alone that emotional regulation, is so important for us as ADHDers that sometimes the questions and preparation we have to do before public speaking is this worth talking about?
Mm-hmm. And that answer may be because this is my job.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? I'll pay rent this month.
Right, exactly. And so it may not be what it is that you're talking about, but it may be that thing that what you're talking about pays for, right? So like I may be passionate about going on vacation next month, so which means that I need to have the income to be able to do that, which then means now I'm talking about cat, right? And so
yeah, making sure my cat has a good life.
Right. And so it's clearly understanding that connection to the content. And it may not be a direct connection, right? Like it may be an indirect connection. And I say that speaking to the people that have to do public speaking for just their job, right? And so they may be
Hmm.
working for an organization that their overall mission that they may care about, but what they're presenting about, they may not particularly be that enthused about.
Yeah. I'll also say, as we've been talking about authenticity quite a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is the authenticity of like, hey, I'm a professional, and even though this isn't the most exciting, I do believe in what we're doing is helpful. It doesn't always have to be this soul level of connection to
Mm-hmm.
something. Even in business, there's been pressure I feel like some folks have had regarding my public speaking business or what I do with ADHD coaching, in the sense of like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. You can do your passion. And I'm like, I never said it was my passion. It doesn't mean I don't care about it a lot or I don't think it's important or supportive. However,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, sometimes doing this isn't always the easiest. And maybe for me personally, something for me to unpack in coaching is my own experience with the word passion and the pressure I feel around it. But I know that
Mm-hmm.
my mission is strong enough, even if it doesn't necessarily have to be my passion or I have to be exactly fully myself all the time.
Yeah. I was gonna say, what do you feel like you struggle with the most when it comes to your own business and then also with public speaking?
I think one thing I'm working on quite a lot is my energy management.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ADHD, so not just ADHD, and so I do experience quite a bit of fatigue at times. At times, some emotional dysregulation that might lead more toward like the meltdown or shutdown space. And so,
Mm-hmm.
even for example, working for my business full time instead of balancing a full time job in higher education and my business has
Mm-hmm.
given me so much more space that I can tell my body signals a lot more, or I can tell when I'm tired. And it's easier to untangle a lot of the societal messages I've had regarding like rest and productivity, and knowing that taking care of myself is also what's going to be most supportive for my clients, is also going to be give the best educational structures to what I'm doing, and it's also going to help me like even like heal or even reframe how I want to do business rather than how everyone else has told me to do it.
That part. And I'm
Yeah.
so glad that you mentioned the energy management piece. I'm always
Mm-hmm.
constantly saying, like, manage your energy, not your time.
Yeah.
And especially for those in the neurodiverse community that are balancing the 9 to 5 life and the entrepreneurship life at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, it can be a lot. And so recognizing that and then building in what you need to build in order to help you manage your energy. And that could look something that could be very different for everybody. But just being able to reflect on how can I manage my energy when I'm trying to balance both right now.
Yes. And for me, another challenge too was just trying to rush a lot of stuff or feeling I should be at a certain point, another place. Like I started working full time for myself August 1st. It's been what, a little bit over 3 weeks. There's
Mm-hmm.
been a number of like judgments or trying to like fast pace certain things where it's like, I've barely given myself a chance. And so like shifting my perspective has been really helpful. And working in my business has made the days longer, which actually
Mm-hmm.
means I get so much more enjoyment out of each minute and each hour.
That's good. And you can build in the time that you need to rest, like in between tasks. You don't.
Yeah, I'm taking a nap after this for sure.
Right. I know. I wish I could do the same, but went through. And if I didn't have a sleeping toddler upstairs, I would definitely do the same thing too. But your life circumstances definitely dictate how you manage your energy too, right? So like part of me wants to take a nap too, then the other part of me realizes that the toddler's energy is going to be on
Mm,
300 when he wakes up from the
yep.
nap. So which means this is where I'm going to have to figure it out.
Yeah.
And
No, different.
identify what's most
Mhm.
important, right? So like I may be a little bit less energetic after this call, but I'm gonna have to find that energy from somewhere. So because the alternative is not gonna be better.
Yes, and knowing that about yourself, that recognition. I know there was a period of time where I'd have a workshop and then I would have like follow-up calls with folks right afterward, and I'm like, I can't do that. Or I had two workshops, one in the morning, one afternoon. I can't do that. And when I say can't, I see it less as like, oh my gosh, I'm so deficient, I can't do that. And my frame has now shifted quite a bit more toward I really gave it my all in this first one. Of course I don't have as much energy. Of course it's not going to look like that. I'm not a robot that can just give presentations every 2 seconds. And so giving myself that grace and seeing it as less as like, oh, can't means deficiency versus can't means this is just my natural limit. And I have to enforce, not only do I have a physical limit, I need to enforce that as a boundary and communicate that to other people. That's my responsibility.
Yes, I literally just had this conversation yesterday with a client, right, around productivity. How many hours of the day are you expecting to really be productive, right? And so, and then also, how are you defining productive? But if you're defining productive as like you are executing tasks and with a certain amount of deliverables, but how many times are you expecting to be able to do that during the day? And is that a realistic expectation? We are human, neurodiverse or not. It doesn't matter. We're still human. We're not computers. So if you're expecting to just execute task after task after task after task from the moment that you wake up to the moment that you go to sleep, that's an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah, and another layer of that too is who benefits from us having the mistaken story that we should be hyper productive those 8 hours, 9 to 5, or 24 hours. Who benefits from that? Often it's not our own physical, mental, emotional health that's benefiting from that. Being autistic, I think I took it literally for a while. This whole like 40 hours you have to be fully on. And non-autistic buddies of mine were like, it doesn't have to be that way. But I took that story and I took that literally, and it led to a lot of exhaustion and burnout. We need to have these conversations more regularly, because then it helps people like me, autistic or not, who take things literally or take on a lot of responsibility or feel that ownership, to realize that it's not theirs to own.
With that being said, we are about an hour in, and I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to talk again a little bit more about the services that you provide, and I can tell my audience a little bit about what else is coming up. But I really appreciated this conversation. I think this is just really great content and really informative and an important topic for so many reasons, because speaking out loud and speaking in public is just something that we all will engage in at one point or the other. And it's just so relevant to our lives. And so I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I appreciate those that have been listening today. But tell us a little bit more about your services and what you have to offer the audience.
Yeah. Well, Megan, I'm excited to see you speaking more and more. So know that I'm rooting for you for every live or every workshop that you're giving, no matter how structured it is. My business, Speak Y'all, I work with folks predominantly one-on-one on their public speaking confidence, as well as specific presentations that they're hosting, whether it's at work, whether it is for a conference, or something important to them in their business. When I'm working with folks, you can reach out to me on my website, www.speakyall.com. I'm from Texas, so I own the y'all now, which is pretty sweet. I also work with folks on their ADHD in the context of ADHD coaching. So with a background in higher education, career consulting, as well as public speaking training, ADHD coaching focuses a lot less on like, hey, what words are you choosing, or how are you speaking, and how do you look, and a bit more of what is the executive functioning skills needed behind preparing a presentation, or what does a job search look like, or what does networking look like when we really break down what the executive functioning tasks are. Because time and time again, you've probably heard this, where people will be like, just network, and they forget to highlight the 100 little mini tasks underneath there, the decisions, the planning, the time management, the emotional regulation. And so for both public speaking and ADHD, I support a lot of folks, especially in the work context, and being a lot more comfortable and taking ownership of their own story.
And thank you for talking about executive functions because, that's what I do. And working with my clients one-on-one, we will always have a conversation about what your executive functioning strengths are and what your weaker executive functions are. So just understand how your brain works and let's work with it and it's not against it.
Yeah.
So we do actually have a workbook coming out. It's an executive functioning workbook and helping you thrive at work with ADHD, where it allows you to have some space to help navigate and better understand your executive functioning strengths and weaknesses and how to create some strategies that are going to work for you. So it's a self-guided workbook that allows you to come up with some strategies and solutions for you. So that is going to be available on sale shortly, but there's a pre-sale going on right now. So the link is in my bio if that's something that you're interested in engaging in. I also do one-on-one coaching, and then I have a group coaching program specifically for women with ADHD where we do some private sessions and we have weekly group coaching in addition to guest speakers, and you can also see all of the previously recorded sessions, and so you can get some help and some support that way as well. And it's a community space, so we love it when our members engage with each other and help support each other in that way. This conversation is is obviously recorded right here on Instagram, and then the replay of it will be available on my YouTube channel. And so the link for that is also in my bio on Instagram. You can pretty much find anything in my bio on Instagram, and so please check that out. And then there'll be, the links and stuff will be in the show notes on YouTube as well. But thank you everyone for engaging in this conversation, and thank you, Sammie, for engaging with and talking with me as well. You're doing amazing work, and I'm so glad that you're being able to provide support for our community.
So thank you so much for the invite, for the awesome questions, and I'll have to check out the pre-order for your book.
Okay, great. I'm really excited about it. It's been a kind of work in progress, and so it should be out soon. And then those that are going to be at the ADHD conference in November, hard copies will be on sale there as well. Okay.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Take care, y'all.
Bye.